Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome to tonight's stream. It is a sweltering hot afternoon here in the New England area. It is a minute past 6 p.m., and it is that time once again for another volume of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, taking some time out of your busy upcoming holiday weekends to talk about all the wonder and the glory that is the Indoor Football League. For those of you who are new to the league or just discovering this channel for the first time, I want to welcome you aboard. Glad you're able to join us for this final stretch of the 2026 Indoor Football League regular season. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor and arena game. That is a passion that I've channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum website that specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams. Throughout the entire season, our staff puts together pretty much everything that you would want to know. Up-to-date team rosters, weekly previews, game recaps, wide variety of other analysis, and historic results from the league dating back as far as 2016. So if you call yourself an indoor football fan, past, present, or future, Sports Coast to Coast is a must-have destination to get your fix on the indoor game. I've linked that below in the description. It is there where you'll also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday piece, which I published out there on yesterday morning. Had a bit of difficulty figuring out which day of the week I was on. But in any event, we are here. Let's delay no further and keep things rolling here. So we are in the final month of the regular season. So we fought from March through June. We are now in July. This is the time where we will finalize the 8 teams that qualify for the Indoor Football League postseason. We've already had a bunch of spots clinched, a few teams on the wrong side of elimination, and a bunch of other teams that are either fighting for a playoff spot or fighting for a potential home playoff game. Every game, every snap is going to matter the rest of the way. It's going to make for some really, really exciting football down the stretch. All right, so we will begin things with a thorough recap of the week that was in week 16, wrapping up June with 7 contests, and a ton of those were absolute classics. We had 2 games in there decided by a single point. We had perhaps the defining play of the season in Henderson between the Gunslingers and the Nighthawks in that contest. We had some other franchise firsts made here over the week. And Sunday Nighter was a fantastic game as well, very much mirroring what a potential IFL championship preview could look like. So we'll go through all 7 of those games, add them to our population of games played so far in the season, which that has totaled 91 games at this point. So just 21 left in the regular season to dissect and discuss. We will go through league-wide and team-specific betting trends. We will recap our results up to this point, looking at some trends that are hot and some that are not, which hopefully will guide some of our picks moving forward. And then we will get into week 17. It's a little bit of an abbreviated slate this time around with just 3 games, 6 teams in action. 8 teams are on bye. They'll get to enjoy the holiday weekend, resting up at their respective homes. So that'll begin with Sunday's doubleheader and then Monday Night Football for the first time in what seems like 3 months. So we'll look through each one of those games, and given the fact that we have 3, it's a perfect slate to come up with another 3-leg parlay of the week. Last week's did not go according to plan, but we will discuss those results as well in just a little bit. All right, so week 16 started on Saturday with 4 games offered on the schedule. starting with the regular season home finale of the Green Bay Blizzard as they hosted the Fishers Freight in a game that the Blizzard tried to make franchise history with in terms of completing a perfect season at the Resch Center, something that the team had not yet done at the IFL level. And this game mirrored so many of the games that Green Bay has had previously on their home turf, where Liam Thompson and Kyrie Robinson, who had 5 touchdowns in this game, simply could not be stopped. In fact, backup Cole Stenstrom getting into the game as well, adding a couple of rushing touchdowns of his own, as the Freight defense just simply had no answer for what was a Blizzard attack that ended up setting the IFL high for most points in a single game this season. Meanwhile, the defense that has been revitalized, setting the tone with 2 early stops that allowed the Freight to get out to an early, or the Blizzard rather, out to a double-digit advantage, one that they would pretty much take all the way to the finish line. Definitely one of the Blizzard's best performances wire to wire in franchise history. They score the most points that they've ever scored in a game in nearly 15 years in their 83-50 win over the Fishers Freight. So if you're the Blizzard, you are now 11-2. You are 1 game away from clinching home postseason football for the 3rd consecutive year, whereas the Fishers Freight at 7-7, they remain on the outside looking in, a game and a half behind Tulsa and Orlando for a playoff spot with just 2 games left on their schedule. We continue on with Saturday's slate with a game, Tulsa at Iowa. And many of us know, since this rivalry started in 2023, that any game involving the Oilers and the Barnstormers can go pretty much any which way that the football gods decide. You could look at stuff right before the game on the previews, get some sort of idea, only for either the game or a specific run in the game to completely flip that narrative. And this game was no different. It started off inconspicuously enough, actually, with early Tulsa Oiler defensive stand and a couple early touchdowns led by TJ Edwards. The Oilers had actually gone off to a 14-point lead. But then Iowa, their defense rose up in this one. They came up with 2 interceptions in the first half. They end up going on a 17-0 run, which actually gave them the lead briefly. And at halftime, their deficit was only 1 point. In the second half, the teams traded touchdowns for touchdowns on 3 separate occasions. With the last score of that bunch, a big touchdown off a rushing attempt by Caleb Ramzier, the extra point by Axel Perez giving the Oilers a 1-point lead. Iowa had the ball with under a minute left with an opportunity to drive down the field, maybe kick a field goal to get their 2nd win of the season and one of the most stunning upsets of the IFL in recent memory. Unfortunately for the hosts, they couldn't really advance much on their drive inside that final minute, and a puzzling decision to go for a 56-yard field goal for what would have been the lead, not necessarily the win because there was still time left on the clock, but maybe a waving of the white flag, who knows. But in any event, the field goal attempt didn't have much of a shot. It missed short, and the Oilers escape day one with a 49-48 victory over the Iowa Barnstormers. So not exactly the cleanest path that Tulsa may have wanted to take, but they get their 6th straight win, their 6th consecutive game to go over, by the way. And after that game, they had taken hold of 3rd place in the Eastern Conference with a record of 8-5, pending the outcome of the Orlando Quad City game, which we'll go into once we get to theirs. Later in the evening, moving further out west to Henderson, Nevada, where the Vegas Nighthawks return home after a tough loss at the hands of San Diego. They hosted the San Antonio Gunslingers, desperate for a win to try to put themselves back in the Western Conference playoff hunt. Big surprise right at kickoff for this one, as it was announced that Jaden DeLaura, despite being dressed, would not start the game for the Vegas Nighthawks. Apparently an injury that he had picked up in between the dying seconds of that San Diego game and perhaps throughout the practice week, forced rookie Quincy Crittenden to take the reins for his first IFL start at quarterback against a deceptively good San Antonio defense. Now, while the Nighthawks did get out to a pretty decent early lead in this one, they were up by as many as 10 in the first half. They ended up taking a 9-point lead into the locker room. But that second half, it started off with momentum swinging in favor of San Antonio. They got an interception, another takeaway throughout that sequence. Their offense coming to life under Zach Calzada and running back Zach Patterson. And the Gunslingers, they've been known to have some pretty decent road upsets in the past couple seasons since they've joined the IFL. They took a lead in the fourth quarter of this contest. Now, they exchanged it a couple of different times with the Nighthawks under their rookie signal caller. But with about 10 seconds to go in the game, the Gunslingers get what was a go-ahead touchdown, 2-point conversion, no good. And that puts San Antonio ahead 42-37. The defining play of the game, I'll spoil it here. It made SportsCenter's top 10 the following morning. It was whatever down, whatever yardage it was. It didn't really matter. Vegas had to get it into the end zone. And Crittenden backed up to his left, saw the back corner of the end zone, unloads a prayer. And wouldn't you know it, it splits San Antonio double coverage into the hands of Seneca McKee, basically over the wall at that point, maintains control of the ball, secures the walk-off touchdown at the buzzer for the Vegas Nighthawks to bail them out of what would have been a third consecutive loss. Instead, the Nighthawks clutched their way to a big win to snap their skid, 43-42 over the San Antonio Gunslingers. That play also cashing the over at the death after the first 59 or so minutes of that game yielded a lot more defensive power than offensive power, all things considered. So certainly our biggest get away with bet throughout the balance of this season, I would say. Moving on to Glendale, where the Arizona Rattlers did battle with the New Mexico Chupacabras. The road has been extremely unkind to the Chupacabras this season. This game against hated rival Arizona, not much different, unfortunately, for the Chupacabras. Second game under interim head coach Jerome Haywood, and Donovan Portery and the Chupacabra offense, they could not really get anything going against a sneakily underrated Arizona front. The other big thing for the Rattlers in this game, Max Myler taking over the starting quarterback duties, retaining that role over Drew Powell for this outing, and he was sharp as ever. It wasn't a perfectly clean game. He did throw an interception, lost a fumble in the third quarter, but he still did enough to pace the Rattlers to a total of 60 points in this game, the second time that the Rattlers have reached that threshold against the Chupacabras. Now, New Mexico, with not much left to play for on their final drive of the game, they fought the full 60 minutes. That's what they signed up for, and they ended up delivering a touchdown with 6 seconds to go on a Wildcat snap to LaJames White. That touchdown didn't come anywhere close to swaying the outcome of the game from a win-loss perspective, but to the over-under bettors in the audience, that was the difference between the over and the under winning. And sadly for us, it's another under where we lost on basically the final play of the game. We've just been such a rough spell for us in that area this year, but nonetheless, from a neutral point of view, Arizona dominates. They get the job done 60-23 over New Mexico. Arizona improving to a record of 8-5 and clinching yet another summer of playoffs in their franchise history. The Chupacabras, meanwhile, fall down to a record of 2-11. On Sunday, we had 3 games. It'll actually be the only week of the regular season where 3 games had been played on a Sunday. But the Tucson Sugar Skulls, one of the hottest teams in the IFL, having a date with the Northern Arizona Wranglers off a rough loss on the road against New Mexico. This was a wild, wild game where you'd look at it for a little bit, Tucson would have the ball, you look away for a split sec, you'd blink for a sec, and the next thing you know, Northern Arizona had the ball. It was just one of those games where the ball switched hands seemingly thousands of times. A lot of that was due to the teams turning the ball over multiple times throughout the game. Jerome Johnson getting intercepted in the first half. Anthony Garrett, I believe, either getting an interception or a lost fumble, something along those lines. But it made for an exciting first half, one in which the Wranglers were actually a 2-point conversion away from potentially tying the game. So the hosts trailed 29-27 at the half. The game started to creep away from them a little bit after a pick six from, I believe it was Ahmad Lyons of the Sugar Skulls, which brought Tucson's lead up to 15 at that point. On Northern Arizona's next drive that went 3 and out, that could have been all that she wrote. But Manny Higuera boots through a clutch field goal, at least stops the bleed in there. And then that Northern Arizona defense putting its stamp on the game the rest of the way. They intercept Jerome Johnson twice more, turning both of those takeaways into touchdowns, the second of which actually gave the Wranglers the lead inside of the final minute of the game. And all it took from that point was one more takeaway, one more defensive stand to potentially steal away the upset. And their 4th interception of the game off Jerome Johnson ended up sealing the deal. So what could have been another feather in the cap for Tucson turns into a bit of a disheartening collapse as the Northern Arizona Wranglers win their 2nd game of the season, 51-49 over the Tucson Sugar Skulls. So the Wranglers at least drawing level with New Mexico at the bottom of the Western Conference, whereas Tucson falling to 6-7. They're still a couple games ahead of San Antonio for the 4th playoff spot, but they are also now 2 games behind Arizona to potentially climb up to number 3. Heading back to the east now, we had a game between the Orlando Pirates and the Quad City Steamwheelers, both of whom really needing a win to enhance their playoff perspectives. This game, the talk heading into it was the bye week enough to get Daquan Neal fully healthy and ready to go for this game as the starter for the Steamwheelers? Unfortunately for the Moline faithful, the answer to that question was no, as Judd Roberts was called upon to start the game after he had had some limited work in a backup capacity this season. The initial going was somewhat encouraging for the Steamwheelers. They got a couple of defensive stands against Orlando to begin, 2 touchdowns on their first 3 possessions themselves, and they actually went out to a 12-7 lead right around the second quarter, calling into the question, the Pirates are on the road. Can they actually turn this thing around? Well, whatever questions like that were floating around, Orlando answered them with an emphasis. They pretty much played 35 minutes of probably some of their best football of the season. In fact, from that point of the second quarter where they were down 5 to about halfway through the 4th quarter, the Orlando Pirates sustained a 29-0 run to completely take all of the hype out of Vibrant Arena. It even got to a point for Quad City where Judd Erickson was pulled in favor of newly signed quarterback Ivan Corbin, who had made a little bit of a splash with the Iowa Barnstormers earlier this season. But despite a couple of rushing touchdowns from Corbin, the hole was already dug too deep for Quad City. And what happens is they endure a very, very tough loss here. Final score 45-26. They lose for the first time at home to the Orlando Pirates in their franchise history. So Quad City now at 5-8, though they are not mathematically eliminated yet, they are going to need to win out, and they're going to need some serious help. Orlando, on the other hand, gets to 8-5 with the tiebreaker in hand over the Tulsa Oilers. So for the time being, they remain the third seed in a hyper-competitive Eastern Conference, which got even more so with Sunday night's finale between San Diego and Jacksonville. The Sharks trying to stop a 2-game losing streak that they had sustained on a quick road spell. San Diego, having recently defeated the Vegas Nighthawks, looking to add another impressive win to their tally so far. I contend that this was, pound for pound, one of the best games of the season, if for no other reason than it pretty much gave us a sneak peek of what an IFL championship game could look like, from the blazing hot offense to the clutch defense late to the wacky bounces that we saw all throughout the game. Everything just adds up in a way that only elite football can. In the case of the Strike Force, they pretty much weathered the Jacksonville Storm all through the first half. And then on a kickoff by Ernesto Lacayo, ball ricochets off the post onto the field of play. The Strike Force recover for a touchdown. That suddenly swung a possession right in favor of the Strike Force and gave the visitors a 14-point lead. Now, Jacksonville didn't back down from that. They didn't back down in Orlando last week, and they fought back to tie the game on this occasion as well. But in the fourth quarter, though, San Diego halting Jacksonville to a 4th down and long attempt with a handful of minutes left in the fourth quarter. Caleb Street getting in front of a Sammy Edwards pass for an interception. So the Strike Force take over with a 7-point lead. They get a touchdown to bring their lead back to double digits. Jacksonville was able to score in the final minute, but they couldn't recover the onside kick. And that was, she wrote, a spectacular game. Final score of this one, San Diego 62, Jacksonville 55. The Sharks, now having lost 3 straight games, are now 9-4, and they are just 1 game ahead of both Orlando and Tulsa for that right to host in the playoffs in the first weekend. San Diego, meanwhile, with this win, they retain their spot at the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, a half game ahead of the Vegas Nighthawks. So those were the results of all of Week 16's games. Our betting record went 3-4, but it's one of those 3-4 weeks, especially within the context of this year, where we take it. We fully understand that, yeah, we lost New Mexico, Arizona under in a heartbreaking way, but we also got San Antonio, Vegas over 83.5. That in pretty much 99 of 100 similar game scripts does not pan out that way. So very easily could have been 2-5, but we'll take those 3 wins and we will move on and look to improve our form from week 17 through 20 here. So we had another tough couple defeats by 8 points or fewer. We had mentioned the New Mexico-Arizona game, but we also had Tucson and Northern Arizona with Sugar Skulls at -3.5. Dropping the ball at the very end of the game, up by 15 in the fourth quarter. Couldn't even bring it home for the win. So a lot of good, a lot of bad, and a lot of ugly, and a little bit unfortunate throughout our 7-game Week 16 slate. But like I said, it's been a little bit par for the course for the season. So how much further we can kind of weather those struggles to the tune of 500, that's probably foregone at this point if we still want a shot at ending the season with some profitability here. So 43 wins and 48 losses on the season with 21 games to go. Our bet record must go 13-8, nearly 2/3 win rate in order to break even heading into the playoffs. So obviously we'll want to go 1-0 each game, and that's kind of our tunnel vision approach. Our 3-leg parlay, as we had mentioned earlier in our outline section. Yeah. Congratulations if you full faded to start things off. But yeah, this one didn't really have much of a prayer. Honestly, we had two of these outcomes in Vegas spread and Orlando Quad City over that more or less were dependent on player availability. Obviously, with the Vegas game, there wasn't much knowledge around that Jaden DeLauro was going to be held out. But at least for the Orlando Quad City game, there was at least some concern over Daquan Neal's availability. But with Orlando so good to the over anyways, it certainly seemed like a good enough bet to go with. That one also unfortunate for a reason that I will get to a little bit later. And then our first pick there was Tulsa, Iowa, under 82.5, with Iowa matching their season high in points with 48. Not really much that we could have possibly done there. So maybe a bit of a letdown game for the Oiler defense, but as good teams do, they found a way to win anyways. So we'll kind of have to follow that strategy for our next 3-leg attempt. Our year-to-date results so far tells a pretty gripping story. From week 6 onwards, it's just been a struggle. We fought tooth and nail to have some of those upward trends, but we still have some time left. I say we go for one more of those mountaintops and summits, if you will. All right, here are our yearly results by bet. The big ones, like we've talked about throughout the balance of the season, home teams, that continued to add to their stellar form, both against the spread and straight up, with hosts going 4-3 on both betting categories in week 16. If you like point scoring in indoor football or any high point scoring in football in general, last week was exactly the week for you, as we had all except for the Orlando Quad City game making the over, with those 7 games averaging 98 per game. So teams were finding the end zone, splitting the uprights at that vigorous, exciting clip that we all love to see when thinking about discussing and observing the indoor football game. Underdogs for the majority of this season have totaled 44 wins and 47 losses against the spread, but the past couple weeks they've actually been reasonably hot. 8-5 in the last 2 weeks against the spread, and I've talked about home series so far. Don't know what happened there. Computer kind of bugged out, but in any event, you're looking at basically 5 out of 7 games that you're covering, and still slightly below 500 from a straight up perspective. But at 16-19, you're talking about a win percentage around like 43%. That's significantly better than the overall population of 29.7%. If you actually look at that 16-19 underdog at home straight up record, doing the math, we can say that road teams have compiled a record of just 11-47. So underdogs barely winning. I don't even think they are winning 20% of their games when they are the visiting team. So pretty significant trend there. We might have an opportunity to strike at that this week. So stay tuned to see what we have in store for this week's games in terms of their lines. Our team by team trends so far. Against the spread, we have 2 teams tied for the top mark in the Indoor Football League, the Green Bay Blizzard and the Orlando Pirates. And wouldn't you know it, those two teams do direct battle against each other this week. That's going to put Orlando's 4-game cover streak on the line, while Green Bay has beat the spread in each of their last 2. Vegas still very strong, as is Tulsa, with dueling 8-5 records against the spread, but Vegas notably dropping the spread in each of their last 4. San Antonio and Iowa are tied for the worst marks of ATS in the league at 4-9, although both teams did cover in their previous outings. New Mexico and Northern Arizona, the 2 bottommost teams in the Western Conference, also struggling against the spread to the tune of 5-8 records. From an over-under betting standpoint, Vegas and Orlando are the 2 top teams in terms of over-under results, with each going 9-4. But for the first time seemingly all season, we have a new leader for highest average scoring game of the teams in the IFL this season, and that is the Green Bay Blizzard, whose games average just under 96 a contest, along with that over-under record of 8-5. Tulsa right there on the heels of 6 straight overs as well, 9-4 in that category. Notably, we also have 7 teams that are profitable on the money line throughout the season, some more so than others. Tucson had their couple of big hits on the money line over the past couple weeks prior to their loss on Sunday. But San Diego, Green Bay, and Orlando, the 4 best teams right now in terms of money line profitability. Here are our active streaks for each team so far. We have mentioned some of these already. Orlando's 4-game winning streak against the spread. Vegas's 4-game ATS losing streak, as well as Tulsa's 6-0 over streak. So we're going to be putting a couple of these, actually a few of these, to the test today, or not today, but later this week, as San Diego puts their cover streak on the line against the Rattlers. Vegas tries to right the ship against New Mexico, and Orlando and Green Bay look to stay hot against the spread. Here's our team-by-team record so far. It disappoints me to report that we are going to fall short on a full completion of our preseason goal of 7 wins per team. With our Northern Arizona bet losing last week, we now have 3 wins compared to just 3 wins compared to 10 losses in those games this season. That mark certainly not helped by the fact that I have not hit a single Northern Arizona over-under pick in 6 attempts. So we see a few of those streaks that are still in rough shape right now. Would love to add a win to those if the picks therein are correct. But yeah, we've hit the mark on 7 of our teams. Still have work to go on the other 6 that still have a shot at meeting that goal. The New Mexico 4-9 record is the only one that I see here that will be able to fall in the same boat as Northern Arizona if we happen to get it wrong. But got to stay optimistic here. All right. Disclaimer time. Lines and odds are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook, as we always have throughout this series history. And we are here for curiosity, entertainment, fun, and discourse of the IFL. No more, no less. This is not meant to be construed as betting advice or anything along those lines. Because as we've seen, there's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock in the sports wagering world. If you do think about playing, please do so legally. You must be 21 years of age or older to play in most jurisdictions. And if you would like to tail or fade my selections, I encourage you to practice safe gaming habits. That includes setting a budget in terms of both your time and your money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is potentially having issues with problem gaming, kind of teetering on an addiction or something like that, there are lots of resources online and issued by your respective state that provide assistance and referrals for that matter. Responsibleplay.org is one example. Haveagameplan.org is another. So those are great tools to use that help debunk gambling myths, answer any questions that come about from this mercurial topic. So again, if you feel like gambling addiction is kind of seeping in, know that you are not alone. You have support, and that help is out there. With that said, we got 3 games this week. We're not taking 4th of July weekend completely off like some weeks are. Let's get to our big board. Make it a little bit bigger by switching around the view here. All right, here we go. One swig of water and we will get right in. All right, we will begin the week on Sunday this week, so a day after the 4th. 4:30 Eastern time kickoff with the game between the Vegas Nighthawks and the New Mexico Chupacabras, with Vegas favored by 21.5. The over-under is 85.5. On the money line, Vegas is minus 1,600 and New Mexico is plus 900. From the lens of the Vegas Nighthawks, this is kind of a weird spot for them in the season, one that not a lot of us thought that they would be in. So let me kind of explain that and fledge it out a little bit. So Vegas started the season 8-1, looking like one of the most dominant teams perhaps in IFL history, at least recent memory, like post-COVID era. But in the past 4 games, things have been very, very hairy for them. They've won just 2 of those 4 games in that stretch, with both wins coming by exactly 1 point. And now they have a little bit of an injury question mark surrounding Jayden de Laura, given the fact that he was held mostly out of last week's game against the San Antonio Gunslingers, though de Laura did get in for what was the Nighthawks' penultimate drive, where the Nighthawks were basically in a gotta have a touchdown or lose the game mode. So perhaps if the Nighthawks play to their potential despite the change at signal caller, maybe Jayden de Laura doesn't get forced in. But in any event, that's going to be an extremely important storyline to monitor as the Nighthawks look to potentially cement their place as a top 2 team in the Western Conference if they're able to take this one against a New Mexico team that has had its well-documented struggles and strife, both on and off the field, in their inaugural season. A lot of people are calling for a potential change at quarterback with Donovan Portery, the 39-year-old veteran of the game, assuming command for the majority of the Chupacabras games since the release of Jerome Johnson. Is this the week where we get a little bit more of a Von Rucker for the Chupacabras, especially considering that Rucker did start the season as Vegas's backup? So perhaps a scenario where he can lean upon some of the knowledge that he has left of the Nighthawks defense in certain practice sessions. It's always fun to speculate things like that from the outside perspective looking in, but it is something to consider for interim coach Jerome Haywood and the New Mexico contingent. So this game is going to be a fascinating one. Very tough to predict, given both teams' uncertain roster situations. I'll talk about a little bit of both sides of the spread and the total first, before I dive into ultimately what my pick is going to be. So if you're looking ahead at the rest of this board, one of the things that you'll notice is that all 3 teams at home are set as the underdog. So the rule of averages state that if you take all 3 of them against the spread, you're probably going to win 2 of them. if the first 16 weeks of the season gave any sort of pattern recognition along those lines. But the New Mexico plus 21.5 does jump out to me, which is a crazy thought considering some of New Mexico's games where you just say, oh, brother, this team has such a low floor. But they've actually been deceptively strong at Tingley Coliseum. Granted, their only couple of wins have been against the Northern Arizona Wranglers, but amongst those other games include covers against the Orlando Pirates and the San Diego Strike Force. So the Chupacabras are actually 4-1 against the spread at Tingley Coliseum in 2026. And the Nighthawks, as we stated before, they have failed to cover in each of the last 4. So if you believe in New Mexico's ability to at least push the issue a little bit, maybe get a strong start and keep this one close, I would definitely prefer the New Mexico at plus 21.5. But I'm not in total love with it, which actually draws my pick somewhere else. The over-under, 85.5. Listen, I've been a proponent all season of if a Vegas game is set in the 80s anywhere along that range, you're taking the over. But you got to put a little bit of a pause on that logic when your MVP caliber quarterback has that injury question mark hanging above his head. It also is worth noting that the first time these two teams played at Lee's Family Forum, which was in late April, we had a 48-12 game. And you could make the case that both teams were maybe in a little bit better shape as far as their rosters go than they may be carrying into this game. So if I were to pick one of the two there, I would say the under would be my preferred play. But my official play for this game, and I know I'm going to draw a lot of hate for this, Vegas minus 1,600 on the money line. This just profiles as a type of game to me where the answer is staring us dead in the face. Vegas, throughout the majority of this season, and you could argue the entirety of the season, has been the far better team, the more cohesive unit than the New Mexico Chupacabras. I'm just not sold on the idea of them taking this game by 22 or more points more often than not. Can they defeat New Mexico by 22 plus? Yes, they absolutely can. But we've seen games where the Nighthawks get put at this sort of lofty number and never even make it into cover territory, whether maybe they leave the door open offensively or the other team perhaps gets a bit of a strong start themselves. But especially given my record of Sunday betting in the later stage of the season, which I believe I'm actually 2-9 since the brawl at the mall for the IFL Cup consolation game in the IFL Cup championship. So really, really bad. And I'm offering that as an excuse to kind of take this layup right here. But again, if we want to get to our 13-8 end of season goal for these final 21 games of the season, we might have to have our hand forced into taking some of these really, really short odds wagers. But I don't see how Vegas loses this game. So why not get our week started on the right foot? So Vegas for the outright win. And we won't need to worry ourselves about the margin at which they do. All right. Sunday night indoor football over on Yahoo Sports at 7:30 later that evening. Massive Eastern Conference clash, potential preview either in the first round or potentially the Eastern Conference final should both teams make it that far. This is the Green Bay Blizzard at the Orlando Pirates, where Green Bay, as the visiting team, favored by 5 in the hook. The over-under is 98.5, by far the largest total of the week. On the money line, Green Bay minus 218, Orlando plus 180. Man, is this game going to be a boatload of fun, quite literally and figuratively. Green Bay is coming off that game against Fishers where they set what was their second highest single game point total in their franchise's IFL history. Liam Thompson, along with Kyrie Robinson, Trayvon Alexander, Drayshawn Hudson, when they are on their game, there is not much that can stop them. A big part of why Green Bay is one of the top 2 teams in the IFL at point scoring per game. Now, pair that with a defense that has been extremely opportunistic. They have slammed the door shut on teams countless times to put together a bunch of their key wins so far this season. And honestly, had it not been for the existence of the Quad City Steamwheelers, we could see Green Bay with a perfect record at this point. In my weekly power rankings, I actually had them above Vegas for the first time since very, very early in the season. So looking very much like a threat to repeat as a representative in the IFL National Championship game. The one knock that you could say on Green Bay is that they've played basically 2/3 of their season on the road or at home. This is their first of 3 consecutive games on the road to close out the season. And from a numbers perspective, it doesn't get much tougher than the Orlando Pirates, who in fact were the only team this season to cover the spread at the Resch Center when the Pirates lost by just 3 points at Green Bay on April 24th. The Pirates are also a perfect 5-0 at home, both straight up and against the spread. And a lot of their season's turnaround has come with defense. They had a really good game where they gave up just 7 against the Iowa Barnstormers. They took advantage of a bit of a nicer matchup against a shorthanded Quad City team last week. They gave up just 26 points. 14 of those were pretty deep into garbage time as well. But yeah, the offense has done its thing all season long under Paxton DeLaurent, Puka Williams, Thomas Owens, Naquan Murray, and Tio Redding. And we're starting to see some emerging players from that defensive unit, specifically Devontae O'Malley on the line, along with Destin Mack in the backfield, as well as Leon O'Neal. So are the pieces finally starting to come together for a Pirates team looking to make a return to the postseason after a 1-year hiatus? Oh man, there are so many ways that we can go with this game. But I think it's that time in the season where we got to let it hang a little bit. We got to take a roll of the dice. I like Orlando at plus 180 here. I do. They've already proven the ability this season to go toe-to-toe with Green Bay in what was their environment. Green Bay, though they do have, I believe it is a 3-2 record on the road this season. Compared to what their sample size has been like at home, it's going to be a unique challenge for Green Bay, who again are just 1 win away from clinching a top 2 spot in the Eastern Conference. But this one by the numbers too. It's like, even if you feel like Orlando has just a 40% chance of winning this game, just spitballing an example of a number out there, the plus 180 odds still brings you back expected value over the long term with a net gain of, at worst case scenario, plus 1.12 units from doing my calculations. But I actually have Orlando at a 45% chance to win this game. So at plus 180, this is absolutely worth the dart throw, if you will. Orlando basically looks at this game and says, hey, Green Bay, you put together a perfect season at home? That's impressive. Guess what? We're capable of doing it too. So, Both teams will be challenged here by each other. It's going to make for a fantastic game, but plus 180 with Orlando is going to be my option here. And that'll bring us to Monday night football in the Indoor Football League. Unfortunately, this does bring us in conflict with the USA's World Cup game against Belgium at 8 p.m. that night. But in any event, at Front Wave Arena, we're going to have an Arizona-San Diego rematch. The first time these two teams have done battle since March. With Arizona, the 1.5 point favorite here on the road. Notice the slight difference in odds on both sides of the spread. The over-under is 89.5. The money line gives Arizona at minus 125, San Diego plus 105. Arizona, they've been a fantastic team by the metrics this year. You could even say almost unfortunate that they're a couple games behind for a top 2 playoff spot right now. But in any event, they are in, but they are going to need this win against San Diego to keep their hopes alive of keeping Desert Diamond Arena available for the first weekend of the playoffs. Their first meeting was a 49-27 win over San Diego, a night where Nate Davis and the offense struggled mightily in a strategic matchup against Kevin Guy, where many of those installments have seen the Hall of Fame head coach get the last laugh. But yeah, the Rattlers turned back to Max Myler at quarterback last week. I would fully expect them to continue riding that hot hand here with a offensive unit that has guys like Ron Brown Jr., Corey Reed, Kamani Clark, amongst others, that have kept Arizona one of the top 4, top 5 teams in the IFL in offensive production. And we mentioned their defense a little bit earlier. Perhaps the defining strength of this team, which is crazy to say given the star power that's laced on that offense. But defensively, they have just been a juggernaut, with Hayden Hatcher coming over from Jacksonville last season, getting Devontae Merriweather back in that secondary. Young guys in the secondary making plays too, like Yasin McKee, Karlvansky DeCius. Make no mistake, Arizona is a legitimate contender to take any game regardless of who they're lined up against. This road matchup against the Strike Force, I mean, they've had some great games against San Diego recently, but all road games are challenges in this league. And the way that Nate Davis has been playing with the return of Eddie Vander at running back, San Diego has pretty much resumed their trend of being an extremely high-scoring offense. They plated 62 on the road against Jacksonville. They've had a season high of 73 in an earlier game against Quad City. This team, I mean, you look at the numbers and the averages and you're like, okay, but this team has an incredibly high ceiling on offense. And the same can be said about their defense too. With guys like Caleb Street coming in, Herman Smith coming in, both of whom have made spectacular plays in the past month or so that have contributed to San Diego's current winning streak, along with their rise to the top of the Western Conference. So very, very good matchup upcoming here. I would be floored if this was not a postseason preview of some sort. But my pick, another home underdog outright. San Diego plus the nickel. It's crazy to me how I hesitate to say disrespected San Diego gets on a week-to-week basis, but in a scenario like this, you're the top team in the Western Conference, albeit by just half a game, and you're still making these guys underdogs? That just seems like a proposition that we would have to take nearly every time. And this game falls into that category of, I feel like the wrong team is favored. You know, with all the respect in the world to the Arizona Rattlers, a road game at San Diego, I feel like San Diego minus 2.5 should be the line here. Just based on a combination of the full season's body of work and recent body of work, I like this try. I have San Diego at better than 50% chance of winning, according to my model. So it makes sense to go with that play, especially at this number at plus 105. So we're going 3 money lines this week, a heavy favorite, along with 2 underdogs. So we'll see how Vegas, Orlando, and San Diego stack up once we complete the indoor war this week. And now I will quickly discuss my 3-leg parlay attempt of the week. I hope to keep this episode under an hour this time, but we'll bounce right through it. We kind of talked about some of these already, starting with my first pick of Vegas, New Mexico, under 85.5. This is a pick that I feel like has a decent shot of converting, regardless of whether Jaden Delores starts at quarterback for Vegas or not. If he does, and he's somewhat close to 100%, obviously you kind of have to be a little bit worried as an underbetter. But in the case of the Chupacabras on offense, they have played much better at home than they have on the road. But this is still a very tough matchup against a very talented Vegas defense. They have had some injury concerns and a little bit of a shuffling of the deck in the secondary as well as the linebacker spots. But I feel like they get some of their mojo back in this plus on paper matchup. Moving to our second leg, Orlando at plus 5.5. We're basically taking our money line pick and teasing it down to where we are covered in the event that Green Bay wins a close game. Say an Andrew Mavis field goal at the buzzer, Green Bay wins by 3. We would be perfectly safe on this pick all on its own. But another big stat with Orlando on the spread as home underdogs, that scenario has happened 12 times so far since 2023. The Pirates have outright won in 9 of those 12. They have covered in 10 of those 12. And one of those losses was a meaningless throwaway game last season when the Pirates limped to a 45-30 loss to close out their final season in Massachusetts against the Bay Area Panthers. So when the Pirates get the short end of the stick on the betting front, when they are the hosts, they find a level of play arguably unmatched by any team in the league in that same scenario. So we'll be leaning upon that mindset for our second pick, and we'll wrap up with our third pick of San Diego, and we will take their 1.5 as that pivotal or as that prophetic just in case situation. Again, this is a game that I believe San Diego is fully capable of winning if they're able to withstand this Arizona rally. If push comes to shove and the Rattlers win by exactly 1 point, again, we would be completely safe. And given our parlay attempt here, it makes sense to take every advantage we can get while also honoring our main game selections. So those are the 3 legs. We are at plus 589 for this week. $10 wager would return $68.98, a couple cents short of that nice figure, but still a pretty hefty payday nonetheless if all 3 of these legs hit. A reminder, the last time that we were limited to 3 picks or 3 games throughout a week, we ended up cashing in week 11 prior to Sunday's American Dream festivities. So we'll recap it here quickly. Vegas and New Mexico under 85.5. Orlando covering at plus 5.5 as underdogs against Green Bay. And San Diego covering as plus 1.5 dogs against the Arizona Rattlers. So if you like it, tail it. If you fade it, go with the complete opposite. That strategy worked last week. Just saying. But yeah, that is my thought process for the 3-game abbreviated week here. So that is going to do it for tonight's episode. I want to thank you again so much for hopping on. If you still want to get some of your indoor football fix this week, my buddy Trey at the Off the Wall podcast is starting up his centennial episode. If he hasn't done so already, I know we're a little bit over on time tonight, but he is at Off the Wall FB, F as in foot, B as in ball. So definitely check it out. I will be going right over there as soon as I close up shop here. But again, I want to thank you for tuning in, showing some interest in the IFL. And if you're going to be placing some wagers this week, I wish you the best of luck. And as always, I will see you at the cashier. Have an awesome 4th of July weekend, everyone. Stay safe.